Started. Welcome to the Meet the Founder pitch and Q&A session. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're all doing well today. My name is Jean Ernst, and I run the Investor Network here at Launch New York. Today, we're joined by Jason Salfi, the founder and CEO, and Dacence Raymond, his chief of staff. Dimensional Energy is raising $7.5 million through a convertible note with 9% interest, $100 million market cap, 20% discount, and 50% warrant coverage. And you can invest for as little as $10,000 through the Launch New York Investor Network. Jason and his team will share more about the round and the company shortly. The format of today's session will begin with Jason providing an overview and a pitch of Dimensional Energy. And then after the pitch, we'll move into Q&A, where we'll open the floor for questions. Jason, I'll pass it over to you to begin your pitch.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Jean. So Jason Salfi here, co-founder, CEO, Dimensional Energy. I'm going to walk you through a pitch that was actually designed for a Series B raise. So you'll learn a lot about our next steps. We're transitioning shortly away from the Series A extension that Jean mentioned, but wanted to make this open to Launch New York ecosystem and investor members before we close this up. And it's a really exciting time for growth for us. So I'm going to walk you through briefly a timeline for the company so you can get to know us a little bit, what we've been through in the last 9 years, how I ended up getting started in 2016 with the company, and really dive into our business model more broadly. We've this year made our first large commercial sale. So I'm going to walk you through the details of that, give you an idea of like what that revenue generation could look like, how we iterate on it, how we build on it, how we build a pipeline around it and expand it over the next decade. So again, really exciting time for the company. So I'll walk you through a little bit of a timeline here. You'll see here that Launch New York was a big part of our beginnings here. I joined NYSERDA as an EIR in 2013, actually, after an exit, where I was helping PIs help start companies out of New York State. And so after a couple of years with Nexus New York, I met my co-founders out of Cornell Engineering, and we started the company based on making syngas from CO2. So David and Tobias had some complementary technologies to do that. We made it into the Shell Game Changer program, got some nice funding from the National Science Foundation, leveraged that into a grant from the Department of Energy and eventually ARPA-E. Made it through all 3 rounds of the Carbon X Prize, where we got to deploy our first syngas reactor in the field, beat the hell out of that thing for about 50 days or so, realized that we had something. Catalyst worked, operated as we thought it would. So we moved that unit down to Tucson, Arizona, in collaboration with the University of Arizona. And that's where we built the first end-to-end carbon dioxide to oil little mini refinery. So there we take CO2 and water and then transform that into a 1-for-1 replacement for a barrel of oil. We raised a seed round that year that once again Launch New York participated in after leading the first pre-seed round that got us through Carbon X Prize. We were accepted into the Elemental Impact Cohort 10, which has been a really big provider of catalytic capital for growth, and big network provider for the company over the last few years. We booked our first sort of sale in future fuel with United that year, and got investment from a climate tech investor, New Climate Ventures. There we operated, let's take a step back. It was at that time we realized as well that we were going to need to operate the facilities and run the catalysts for years and get tens of thousands of hours of data to someday be able to provide performance guarantees to our customers. So the plan that we're actualizing now in 2025 is really 5 years of operations, 3 years of operations in the making, specifically where we would operate the catalysts that we now sell for all these years and put them through the ringer with testing, real world operating conditions. develop our safety protocols, standard operating procedures, and get everything documented so that we could scale up with a customer here 2022 to 2024, and now operating facility in Richmond, British Columbia. So this facility is after years of development of this business relationship and years of actualization of our technology platform, where we could do a first of a kind demonstration with CO2 from a flue stack at an actual cement plant, and make oil, a one-for-one replacement for oil from that CO2 from the calcination of limestone. We did that with proceeds from our Series A round, and continue to build inroads with potential clients. And now we're into sort of this deployment phase. So to give you some pictures of what's going on, we've got the lab in Ithaca, New York, where we continue to innovate, develop catalysts, run long-term testing, take all the technology we develop in Ithaca, run it in Tucson, Arizona with this operations team that goes 24/7. We're now running another site, like I mentioned, in Richmond, British Columbia. This is where the calcination CO2 gets upgraded to oil. And this year we made our first sale, which is this Louisiana target commercial operation date for 2027. That's a $56 million 10-year catalyst lease. So this is I'm sorry, I kind of skipping around here. Just to kind of back up a little bit. I should give you a little bit more insight on the business model that we're running here. So we take the technology that we've developed over the last 9 years, and we work with developers to license that technology. So it's the case that developers that are interested in selling sustainable hydrocarbons need technologies to do so. So there's a handful of developers and a growing number of developers that are really excellent at finding sites, developing the power infrastructure and the feedstock infrastructure, the logistics, the permitting and whatnot. But what they ultimately end up needing is to have a catalyst and process technology at the center of that $1 billion of infrastructure. And that's where we come in. We work with the developer to put together the technology package, and the technology packages that yield effectively the feedstocks for lubricants, consumer goods, aviation, and freight fuels. So that's a little bit about the technology and the commercial opportunity. So going back to the sale that we just made, it's a $56 million 10-year license deal that we've been working on for a number of different use cases for about 2 years now. We landed our first one a couple months ago, and now we're in execution mode. What ends up kind of being the case here is that if you take the catalyst that we manufacture, the long-term recurring revenue, that sort of annuity piece, and the site license, and you add all that together, it ends up being about $15 per barrel. And that's for one single unit operation that we've developed here at Dimensional Energy. And the blended margin for that is about 40%. So that's where you take that all the license revenue, the catalyst revenue, and the site license, add all that up, subtract the cost of the catalyst, and some modest staff time for the management, and that's where we get that margin. And this is just for one aspect of the plant. And what we're doing is building a pipeline of opportunities that extends across the plant. So it is the case that many of these developers that will need not just the single reactor. If they do, that's fine. We're happy to license a la carte. But if they need more of the process, so to go from carbon dioxide and water to synthetic oil, we can license the syngas reactor, integrated and automated with the Fischer-Tropsch reactor, which makes the oil. But it's also in our wheelhouse to provide services around the engineering and monitoring, ongoing optimization, the services for finance partnerships. We've got a deep bench of potential project finance providers that can help the owner operator fund the facility. And we also have a number of different offtake contracts that we can assign to different projects as they come online. So as we expand, we've got the opportunity to go from that $15 a barrel to up to $25 a barrel across the entire plant. And so this is where we start to leverage more of the technology platform, more of the services that we've mastered, and apply that to a pipeline of customers that we've now put in place. So we've got two more in the queue that are very close. We've been nurturing these deals for upwards of a year each, and they both have their own profile of services that they need, and we're hoping to close more deals just like the first one, only bigger in the next year. The next step after that is we're raising the Series B after we close off this round that we're raising here that you're all participating in, hopefully, in getting into expansion mode, and going from that 1 to 2 to 3, and then developing the pipeline with Series B proceeds that we'll raise later this year and get into growth and development. So this is a small sliver of a good size obtainable market. So if you look at the whole hydrocarbon market, we're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars for the synthetic side of that and the sort of sustainability focused side of that. We've cleaved off a smaller obtainable market based on market research, and envision a fairly small sliver of that market potential going to Dimensional Energy over the next 5 years. The product slate that we will be making here largely is focused on the earlier days on the lubricants and sort of specialty product side. So this would include waxes, like cosmetic grade waxes and paraffins, all the way to type 3 plus base oils for everything from high performance lubricants to fluids for cooling data centers and whatnot. And then over time, as the SAF and sustainable aviation fuels and sustainable fuels markets mature, we'll start to get more into the scale potential into the 2030s, 2040s, and 2050s, and see the obtainable market grow. And that's where we'll have a lot more ability to grow into greater licensing opportunities and potential acquisition. Before I wrap it up, I just wanted to introduce a little bit more of the team. So Dasens is also on the call with us. She's leading everything around the company from a company culture and the standpoint of keeping the wheels turning here. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on at Dimensional Energy is making a really great place to work. I have to hand it to Dassen. She's really done an amazing job making Dimensional the place I would dream of working. We provide our employees with opportunities to grow, great benefits, and we're really excited to continue to grow the team. Siobhan here, who's also been a big part of the growth. She's got everything policy side. She will contact me the next morning after the Senate releases the bill and say, "Here's the summary." I don't know how she digests 1,000 pages of policy in an evening, but somehow she does it alongside actually developing a lot of the sales opportunities that we have for not just the offtake contracts, but for the relationships we're putting in place with the developers. Bruce Logue's our CTO, and he's a highly sought after subject matter expert in the Fischer-Tropsch and syngas space. He's been in the business for 20 years at the EPC level or subject matter expert specifically with Fischer-Tropsch. Brad Brennan's our CSO. He invented the catalyst, one of the catalysts that we're now commercializing. He's been with the company since 2019 and a big part of our sort of innovation ecosystem internally. And John Stanley, who some of you know, he was with Warburg for 20 years, and then also that where we met was at NYSERDA, where we were working on CLCPA, living and breathing the sort of the Albany life for a couple days a week together, and got to know each other pretty well. And eventually he joined Dimensional as CFO full-time in 2023 after we raised our Series A round. So basically, we have a really deep bench of subject matter experts now looking to execute. I think we're pushing closer to 55, 60 people, spanning the everything from operators to 30-year plus engineers. And really excited to grow into the opportunity, take any questions that you might have. I know this is a little bit of a curveball because I'm giving you guys the Series B pitch, but it's really relevant because we're wrapping up this A extension and this is what you'd potentially be investing in. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jason. That was very comprehensive. Now I'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have.
Hey, Jason, Evan Sports, really impressive company. Congratulations to you and the team. One aspect that really interesting, talked a little bit more about the developers. Like, what does it take to actually partner with one? How long does it take? What does that relationship look like moving forward? I found that to be, probably the biggest unlock of the business, if I'm reading it right.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of companies in our space will, kind of claim, "Hey, we're going to go out and build big plants and sell lots of fuel and do X, Y, and Z." But the developer really has a specific expertise that just being a subject matter expert in making technology happen just doesn't apply to. So the developer, as you know, likely is really expert at, say, site selection, feedstock, logistics, permitting, all the sort of nuts and bolts to finding the site. But what they don't have is the technology. And so what they end up doing is issuing, in many cases, RFPs, so these requests for proposals that would solicit companies like ours to submit a technology proposal. And so because our team is really dialed in from like all the years of experience they've had at EPCs, which are engineering, procurement, and construction firms that handle the engineering and the construction of these large infrastructure projects, we're able to put together really good comprehensive bids for these technology packages. And one of the ways that we've been able to make really solid inroads with the developers is specifically around the sort of human touch that we bring to it. So when it comes to implementing the technology, there's some folks in the business that would just say, here's the license for the technology, here's the vendor where you can buy the catalyst, and good luck integrating it and designing the whole system and getting it put in place. You can work with this EPC, go ahead, but there's always that subject matter expert interface where you need to go from like the technology provider to the EPC. You need that glue in between. And so we become very efficient and expert at providing that sort of expertise in the middle, where we can help the developer get to final investment decision with their capital stack, and then get the technology engineered to a point where it can be implemented by the EPC. So it's a pretty hands-on sort of customer relationship build over the course of, say, anywhere from 6 to 12 to 18 months. But once we are able to be in that role, we figure it's very sticky because the developer wants to work with who they want to work with. And once they see a successful sort of like relationship build that's like a big part of it. The other part of it is the developer and potentially the owner operator works really hand in hand with the EPC, the engineering, procurement, construction firm. And the EPC has a big role in getting the project first to FID. And the technology provider and that relationship that the EPC can maintain with the technology provider has a big influence on their ability to provide the comprehensive performance guarantee and full wrap for the project. So we focus specifically on providing that EPC with a good feeling for the technology. We provide real world operating data sets, a commitment that the team will be there the whole time through the process, all the way through optimization and ongoing services under operation if that's necessary. And so that EPC relationship really helps the developer and the owner operator sort of get things done. So that's a little bit of the details of that and our philosophy around like just being really, providing people with really excellent customer service too.
That's great. Appreciate it.
Hi, this is Noman. Thanks for the presentation. It's interesting. I happen to have spent a lot of time in this space. Oryx GTL and Pearl GTL are the first couple of projects in my oil and gas days I happen to be involved in. A couple of questions. So what I'm hearing is you're selling licensing and catalysts to either EPCs or end users. Is that correct?
Yeah, the owner operator, the EPC in many cases is contracted by the owner operator or the developer. And so we'll license that catalyst to the developer or the project itself. But yeah, just a little bit of nuance there.
Okay.
Impressive that you were at Shell Pearl. I could turn the tables and ask you a million questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at the startup for Oryx GTL many years ago, and it was one of the first synthetic fuel projects globally, and all eyes on is this gonna work or is it gonna blow up because of the Fischer-Tropsch reaction being highly exothermic. So Sasol being the partner there made it a success, and then the rest is history. The one other question I have is, so it looks like. You guys are, and it's good to see this because I think the issue had been you got to invest billions of dollars, right, to get to these larger plant sizes. And then the cost, unfortunately, of building such a facility was just too cost prohibitive. So if I look at Oryx GTL, it was about 35,000 barrels per day. You guys landed about 2,000, which is actually pretty interesting. What is your break-even cost in barrels per day or hurdle rate or in terms of oil price?
So basically, um, it's hard to answer like a one size fits all there, but I'll just kind of lay out a couple of assumptions if we do the power to liquid pathway. So there's like the Shell Pearl kind of methodology where you take the steam methane reforming of methane, right? So the natural gas reforming. And so like let's just say they're in the say $30 per MMBTU kind of range. Nominally, you're going to end up at say $50 a barrel or something like that, and then you're going to add in some capital and some OpEx and whatnot. Um, so you can kind of get these heuristics for that raw Syncrude or raw upgraded, paraffin or base oil or whatever they're sort of outputting that way. Um, if we took the analog for what we're doing, and I'll just use the power to liquid piece, like where we take electricity to make hydrogen and we take carbon dioxide to provide the carbon atom.
Yep.
Um, so for every $10 per megawatt hour in power cost, you add about $1 per gallon in fuel. So if you're at $40 per megawatt hour, for example, for 4 cents a kilowatt hour, in electricity price, that ends up being about $4 per gallon in power cost.
Okay.
And then for every $100 per ton of CO2, that ends up meaning about $1 per gallon in production costs. So call it, 40 a megawatt hour, $100 a ton, ends up being about $5 a gallon for production. Um,
Gotcha.
Okay, so you end up getting a much more expensive barrel because we're really starting with a much lower energy set of molecules, and we're investing a lot of energy. Where we win and where we're sort of price competitive today is toe to toe on the Fischer-Tropsch technology platform. So
Okay.
if Shell or if Sasol or Johnson Matthey or if any of the big name catalyst providers out there were just going toe to toe with them on FT Catalyst, we're going to be in the same ballpark, but provide sort of a different set of services and a different, interest level in small projects. What we're finding is like the big name catalyst providers are uninterested in anything less than 10,000 barrels per day. So anything less than say 5 billion in infrastructure really gets like less interesting to the big balance sheets out there. So like you mentioned, we're in that sort of small to medium size.
Yeah.
And for like the returns, and a hurdle rate, when you get north of 1,000 barrels a day, it starts to make sense economically. So we target the 2,000 barrels per day. That's like an optimal run rate for what's available as far as power is concerned. So there's power. It's really hard to find power in bigger, anything bigger than a couple 100 MW chunks at a time and get your interconnection. Logistics around CO2 delivery, being able to apply like the same staffing for a 2,000 barrel plant. You'll need the same for a 200 barrel plant as you need for a 2,000 barrel plant, basically. So you really need that, basic economy of scale to get to good operating margins. And there, applying the product slate, because we do sell higher value paraffins and base oils to different customers. We're able to hit, say, 15% unlevered returns at that, say, 2,000 barrel plant.
Okay.
And if we apply the right product slate, so that would be a mix of fuels, base oils, and high value waxes. So we can provide a breakdown in a very comprehensive project model to give you like more of an idea of what's going on there. But in a nutshell, I hope that kind of hits the parts of.
Yeah, that helped because obviously previously used to be cost prohibitive. So this obviously the smaller the size makes the capital cost go down, but it's not cost prohibitive from the hurdle rate. So your strategy. So the other question I had was so Catalyst and obviously the licensing part. But you mentioned that the equipment side, right? You work with EPCs to spec out the equipment so that they can provide this technology lump sum turnkey to end users.
Yep, that's right. And we've really shifted our model over the years to be focused on a capital light model. So, there's going to be billions of dollars of infrastructure investments in this, but like we're at the center of it all with our platform, but we don't have to raise all that project capital. We do what we're really good at, and we rely on the project developers and the owner operators to raise that capital. And as they raise that capital, they come to us it's a quicker path to revenue for us.
And do you is your target growth market, right, growth strategy around brownfield or greenfield, or combination of both?
It's a combination of both. So the great thing about our Fischer-Tropsch catalyst, it's a standard straight up the fairway shell and tube heat exchanger fixed bed reactor. So it's going to put you. I mean, it's honestly like if you go to Shell Pearl's spec sheet, it's going to be very similar in output. From a yields perspective, and the I'm blanking on what else I was going to add to that, but yeah, that's could you repeat the other aspect of the question real quick?
Yeah, the question was your strategy. Is it focused on brownfield,
Oh yeah,
greenfield, or a combination of both?
right. So we can do both, and because of the catalyst, we can do both brownfield. So our first contract actually is a brownfield. So that's why it's getting to COD so fast. So it's
Okay.
hitting FID now and then COD in 2027. Otherwise, they're much longer, as you would know more than most on the call. The time from FID to operations can be quite long.
Yep.
So
Great. Thank you so much.
yeah. Did you end up working with boss Kirkert when you were you at Shell for the?
So I used to work for a company called Roper Industries Compressor Controls Corporation. They provided the control systems
Yeah.
that went on the turbo machinery. And so because it was a first of kind, right, the compressors, if they trip, that's it. You would blow up the Fischer-Tropsch reactor.
Yeah.
So the control system became extremely critical. So I happened to be involved, and then because it was new technology, I was working with our headquarters to look at potentially so-called licensing to others. And sure, Shell Pearl at the time was the next big project, but then it got stalled multiple times. And by that time, I left and I joined GE. GE coincidentally was actually interested in this space, but we're considering, this about 10 years ago, considering building a modular design offshore.
Mhm.
because offshore platforms were giving off CO2 and basically venting. Well, with all of the European regulations, they were being fined. So they were looking at, is there any way to come up with the modular design? Back 10, 15 years ago, the costs were just too cost prohibitive, so it never took off. So
Yeah, that's great. Well, I might want to circle back with you and trade stories again and especially talk to you about your controls experience.
sure, no problem at all.
Thanks.
Hey, Jason, thanks a lot for all of this. A question to ask is Washington, D.C. Can you talk about any impacts of recent last 150 days or so from Washington, D.C. on the company and plans?
Sure. So a lot of the so 45V, 45Q, 45Z. So Z was the fuel credit, and that it got extended beyond 2030, I believe now. So that was, one of the only things that made it through Ways and Means that would benefit. They didn't touch 45Q really. That's kind of like, standard across the aisle benefits. So there is a credit for carbon capture still in place and utilization still in place. But 45V was a huge ding on the clean sort of green hydrogen space. Like that's where there was anywhere from $1 to $3 per kilogram in subsidies made available to hydrogen developers, and that was going to really drive down the cost and increase the likelihood of projects getting to FID. So we're seeing like a huge, stop on green hydrogen production development in the USA right now. That's still going on in the EU. There's a number of projects, and there's some areas where the power cost is not prohibitive for the generation of green hydrogen, but 90% of the projects have kind of gone nascent for now until there's more clarity on that 45V coming back if it ever does. From a capital providing perspective, some of you may be aware that we were working closely with Seneca Holdings on a plant potentially in Niagara County. We were in discussions with the loan program office, tribal loan guarantee program there that has put a pause on providing loan guarantees, thus putting a little bit of a pause on that project because that imperiled a big aspect of our capital stack for that project. So that was a direct impact of the new administration coming in and putting the stop sign on a couple of the IRA and bipartisan infrastructure law momentum that was gained in the last four previous. So those are some of the direct impacts. Broadly speaking, sentiments globally, our project in Canada has gotten huge acceleration because of what's going on in the US. So we're focusing a lot of efforts there. We're focusing a lot of efforts in the EU as well. So there's opportunities to work with developers there that have, I know there's dozens of projects that are percolating in the EU with good access to capital. Everything that we just lost in the US as far as Bill and IRA is underway and well with good alignment in the EU with their own sort of structures, and I won't go into the EU acronyms, but there's good subsidies and good basis for building clean energy based projects there. And we still have hope for a couple in the US actually, because one of the key things about our platform is by not just selling fuel, by selling the base oil cuts and the wax cuts, we have a higher value product coming out the back end. So not as reliant on the subsidies. So that helps our developers take a better look at getting good project economics with what's available on the cost of feedstocks and a subsidy.
Are there any other questions? We've had some good ones so far. It's been interesting. Thank you. Does anybody else want to chime in?
How about an easy one? Jason, what kind of exposure do you have to precious metal markets or rare earth markets for the production of the catalyst?
On the reverse water gas shift, we're totally unexposed. We on the FT, it's a cobalt-based catalyst, but we've got certification from the vendor that it's a, I don't know what the ISO number is, but it's, not sourced from anything that's unethical. And there's a huge recycle component. So for like the catalyst regeneration period, where we take basically we can reclaim the metals in our process, so it's not a disposable item. And so the amount of cobalt that we need is viewed as not imperiled, by say like battery industry or anything like that. So we see a good line of sight to being able to access the materials for our supply chain.
Jason, quick question, and you may have already covered it. What's the valuation and who's the likely acquirer of your business? And maybe that's hard given all the changes out there, but how about if you take a guess?
Yeah. So there was post money on our Series A was $80 million. The note that's open right now has a cap of 100 million with a 20% discount, I believe, Gene,
Nice.
and 8% interest, actually, if I'm not mistaken. The Series A extension is coming in pretty close to what the A rounded out as, but a lot of 2 years of de-risking kind of under our belts there. Potential acquirer, and we don't have a valuation set for the Series B yet. We've got a couple of really good irons in the fire with some potential leads, but no valuation set yet. The second part of your question was acquisitions, sort of like exit strategy. So there's a couple of different archetypes. One is some of the EPCs, the engineering, procurement, and construction firms will have a portfolio of technologies that they own. So when the say developer comes to them, they would say like, hey, what technologies do you have in your queue that you could apply to this type of project? And in some cases, the EPC would say, I've got 2 of the 8 that you need. And if those are favorable, the developer might, lock into to that offering. And so there's EPCs that like to acquire technologies that are getting hot with the developers. And it could be the case we work enough at the center of all these billions of dollars in infrastructure getting deployed, enough that an EPC could see us as a good acquisition target. One of the EPCs I first talked to in 2016 is still, a regular sort of, collaborator, someone we track with, and this is like part of their model is to acquire technology. So that could be an acquisition potential. The other is developers that, have a real specific mandate to only do one type of thing, like a fuels developer, for example. They also do like to buff out their portfolio for various reasons. One is to make sure they have access to things that they like. So we have our first customer actually has a vision of developing 10 plants over the next decade. And they really want to have access to our catalyst, because now that they've put all these plans and all this engineering work in place, they don't want to risk losing the opportunity to use our catalyst. So that could be a company that raises enough money to buy us out. And they really like our team as well. So that's also kind of a potential merger acquisition. And then there's other companies in the ecosystem here that we have the full technology stack to go, everything to basically make the oil. Some of the other companies in the space, they can only make syngas, for example, and they need to license the FT. So there's potential interest from other companies that are also young in their sort of life cycle, but maybe accessing different pools of capital for consolidations. So we'll see. But we have not entertained the public route. But it's that'd be a question that you want to dig in on with John Santaleri, who's not here right now, but we're not pursuing that route at this moment.
Good, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Are there any other questions out there? All right, well, Jason, thank you very much for your time today. It was a very informative pitch session, and as I mentioned, there were a fair number of people who couldn't make this session, so we will be providing a recording of this session to them, and to anybody that's on here. You're also welcome to rewatch it as well to make sure you got all the details.
Yeah. So this is the first time I delivered the Series B pitch in a format like this. So we're just getting the B round started. So you're the recipient. It's nice to come bring it back home to Launch New York and have you guys as my prototype pitch. So I'll have to go back and see what I need to change.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you and getting this round closed. If anyone has any follow-up questions or wants to know more about the deal, please feel free to reach out. And you can always reach me at jernst@launchny.org. And thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.